Hey YouTube, so today I'm going to be talking about my papaya setup that I have. So I've covered a lot of high-end species, so I figured I would cover a more common species and a generic setup, if you will. So a lot of people have these bins. This is our first enclosure that we've ever had. We got this as a kit from Scales and Scoots at a reptile show. So you can see that half of this is vented, half of this is not vented. And then for their vents, they just cut holes and then they put this fabric over, this mesh fabric. So this is low tech. I think that I don't even know if they sell these larger kits anymore, but now they sell like this. I'll show you what the Godzilla's. So like a more legit mesh screen, if you will. So this screws in to the container, and this is the only vent that I have for the Godzillas. So you can see that there's a lot more ventilation, less ventilation, and this stays a lot more humid throughout, whereas this area becomes pretty dry if you don't mist it down. And in fact, it was pretty bone dry. I gave some new substrate, so I took a little bit of old substrate out, put the new substrate in, which is more wet, more moist than what was in there. So that helps and by putting more moist, newer substrate in, I'm replenishing their food, and then I'm mixing it around. So I'm kind of helping the general area over here that was bone dry become a little bit more moist. Because in the drier areas, there weren't very many pods, because once again, it was too dry for them to really want to be there. So, they were all mostly congregated into the more wet section because this was too dry. So also good indication of, if an area is too dry or too wet is if we do a flip, all the pods are over here on the more humid wet side versus the dry side. But also, to be fair, they kind of like this more curvature, whereas you can see that this one's like more flat and not as much space for them. But yeah, that will be an indication generally of if an area is too dry or too wet. So if this is like too wet for them, then there might be more over here, more so than over here. General setup for most species, because they are, I would say generally isopods are dwellers, soil dwellers. So you want a deep substrate. So once again, we have a deep substrate for them. This is probably about 2 to 3 inches. I can actually measure it right now. Hold on a sec. Let's see. I would say, about 3 inches. Substrate's about 3 inches. And then, we can see that the more humid, wet side is less substrate, more sphagnum moss. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Then you have your leaves in there, just like you do with a lot of these kinds, because this is also a food source. You do have to spray the leaves, though, to help them break down. So once again, every 2 weeks or every week, I would pick up a cork bark, mist it down with this, and then mist down the moss, and then you're good to go. And then, if you want food dishes and then give them food, this is that fish food flake. And if you actually look at the isopods, you can see the flake, see their area is more red. If we zoom in, if you look at their mouth area, especially this little guy right here and this guy right here, you can see that they're kind of transparent, and the red fish food flake that they're eating, you can see. So it's kind of cool. And by giving them that flake, I think it also helps them be a little bit more pink. So if I do flip, you're gonna get some not as pink ones, but There's a little guy that probably just ate some food. Yeah. So that's pretty much it for the papayas. And I would say isopods in general. Humid zone, dry zone. Don't let it get too dry though. And then cork bark, leaves, rock if you want. You may be asking what this thing is. This thing is a podwick. So the concept is there's these laces, and then you fill this up with water. And then it takes the water and it distributes it through to wherever you have it placed, and then that expands out and the soil absorbs it and becomes wet or moist without having to spray down your substrate. So people say that doing this is bad because you could drown babies. I think it's fine, but if you are spraying it all over in the substrate, that could kill the babies, especially if there's any on the surface and they get trapped in like a water bubble. So just be mindful if you're going to spray down your enclosure. I say as long as you're like misting your leaves every week or two, that will help the humidity of the substrate down below, so you don't necessarily have to water it down if you're misting the your leaves and stuff on your non-wet side. And then your wet side you would mist down more often. So as soon as this starts to dry up, then you can wet it down or spray it down. So once again, I like these kind of things. I've found that the name brand one, Fluval or whatever it is, works the best. Way better than the cheaper ones. I've gone through a bunch of cheap ones and I was like, I'm just gonna get the Fluval one. This one I got in Japan actually. So I don't know if you can get this in the States, but this one works pretty well. And then I just have a squirt bottle, so I can squirt down the sides or squirt into there. And yeah, and this has a cap, just so you know. So that's the papaya setup that I have, and pretty much other pods that are more general. Same sort of concept: deep substrate, leaves, cork bark, moss, or sphagnum moss. You can do real moss. So this is the lower end species, so they get sphagnum moss. Higher end species get real moss. Just kidding, but for real. The next thing about papayas is that they are more active. So you can see that they're out and about. If these were, so these are Cubaris Murina, I believe. So it's a subset of Cubaris, but like if these were duckies, you would not see them out right now. Like even if there were a bunch of duckies, they would be like, I want to hide. I don't want to eat right now. The sun's out. Leave me alone. But these guys, they're like, yeah, I don't care. Like, they're a little shy. If you were to do a flip, they're gonna kind of run around like, but they're definitely more chill than a ducky or other Cubaris. Thanks for watching, and once again, if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate you hitting that thumbs up button if you found it useful. If you want to subscribe to my channel, that would also be appreciated. If you have any feedback, just let me know down in the comments, or any questions. Feel free to ask and I'll try to answer as soon as I can, or maybe address it in a different video depending on the question and the answer.